Hello everyone, and welcome to the course in Trafficking in Cultural Property. It's great to have you here again, and I hope you will enjoy learning more about our topic. My name is Virág, I'm your course instructor and mentor, and this is our fourth lecture. So here are your weekly questions. Please pause the video and try to answer them. Are you ready for the final quiz? This week's topic is the main stakeholders in combating the trafficking in cultural property. This lecture will be a little bit dry as we talk about law and international regulations and cooperations, but I think it's important to hear about them in order to understand our topic fully. Also because the illicit trade of cultural property is under-researched and misses the necessary attention of the public. The topic is more relevant than ever since, as a result of the new global crises, COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine. In this lecture, we will explore the existing regulations and responsible bodies who are fighting against illicit trafficking in cultural property. So we already talked about the Hague Convention from 1954. If you don't remember, please go back to our first video. The Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the Event of Armed Conflict is the first international treaty on the protection of cultural property in armed conflict. It was signed at The Hague, Netherlands in 1954 and came into force in 1956. It has been ratified by 133 states. In addition to rules designed to protect cultural property during an armed conflict, these agreements also provide measures that can be implemented in time of peace. We also talked about the Blue Shield International, which is coordinating the structures for the protection of cultural assets. Again, please go back to our first video if you don't remember. The most significant regulation of the antiquities market is the 1970 UN Convention, which was ratified in 140 states in 1970 and came to force in 1972. It was one of the first acts to implement ethical standards in the trade of archaeological objects. The convention promotes taking actions to prohibit and prevent the illicit trafficking of cultural property, and every state can define its own cultural property. It provided the first framework for the prevention of import, export, and transfer of cultural property, and encouraged international cooperation between state parties for the sake of saving our cultural heritage. As it was mentioned before, protecting cultural heritage is also a criminal law issue. Therefore, expanding AML, anti-money laundering, and CFT, combating the financing of terrorism, compliance became a hot topic in recent years. Money launderers are constantly searching for alternative ways to scrub their cash. The antiquities market is one of the best places, as it was already mentioned, because the valuation and pricing of antiquities are opaque and easily manipulated. In 2018, the European Parliament adopted the 5th Anti-Money Laundering Directive, while the Illicit Art and Antiquities Trafficking Prevention Bill have become final in the US. EU member states had to transpose the directive into national law by early 2020. Shortly after issuing the 5th directive, the EU issued the 6th Anti-Money Laundering Directive as well. While the focus of the 5th was to increase transparency, 6th seeks to harmonize the approaching that EU member states use to combat money laundering. The UN Sustainable Development Goals also address the importance of the protection of cultural heritage. Goals, visions, and principles mention the importance of culture several times. For example, SDG Vision 8 states that the UN stands for cultural diversity. Vision 8.9 states the support of policies that promote sustainable tourism that creates jobs and promotes local culture. Vision 11.4 calls to protect and safeguard the world's cultural heritage. SDG Goal 16.4 targets the recovery and return of stolen assets. Principle 36 states that the UN acknowledges the cultural diversity of the world. We also have to mention the International Council on Monuments and Sites, an association that works for the conservation and protection of cultural heritage around the world. And it was founded in 1965 in Warsaw, and it has members in 153 countries. And these members must be qualified in the field of conservation, archaeology, anthropology, art history, paleontology, and so on. ICOMOS is a partner and founding member of the Blue Shield, by the way. They put together these so-called red lists, which are practical tools in the fight against illegal trafficking. So these lists contain actual objects which are the most vulnerable to illicit traffic. The title of this lecture mentions the stakeholders. And I wanted to mention not just international corporations and law, but also professionals who fight against illicit trafficking in cultural property. So I wanted to show you a project which is led by cultural heritage experts. It is called the Antiquities, Trafficking and Heritage Anthropology Research. They literally dig into social media to find objects that are stolen and subject of trafficking. They track more than 95 Facebook groups and gathered more than 3,600 pictures. I highly recommend to download their full report from their website. It is really interesting to see how antiquities trafficking is happening on social media these days. And last but not least, you as the public are the stakeholders in the fight against the illicit trafficking of antiquities as well. Participating in lectures like this, creating awareness, being a volunteer in cultural heritage protection projects is a fight against this issue. So thank you again for being here, and I'll see you in my next video.